was only 15 minus, not 20. But they got, in 6 hours work, we couldn't work any longer, more work out than in summer with 10 hours work. You couldn't stand for a minute still.
What happened to your brother? Was he still with you at that point? He was younger than you, wasn't he?
He's 4.5 years younger.
Yeah.
I mean, he was only
So
10
where did
when he
he
came.
go?
Pardon?
Where did he go when you went to the adult camp?
No, it was a
He was
family.
with
He was a
you?
family.
Okay.
Yes. And he went to school.
I'm confused. He was with your relatives in
Yeah,
Switzerland,
yeah,
I
yes.
see. Okay, because he was 4 years younger than you. What about the rest of your siblings and your parents? What happened to them?
One sister went to another cousin in France, Strasbourg.
That's Ruth, yeah?
Ruth,
Ruth.
correct. And she's still alive in Israel. And she, unfortunately, she had it very, very hard. I may tell you a small story. When Hitler invaded France, they moved to Vichy and stayed there. And then she had a chance through the Red Cross to go to America. And she went to America. And unfortunately, she was sent to a family which Jewish, but not Orthodox. What does it mean, not Orthodox? Something you won't believe. First of all, she couldn't eat, only food. That's a small item. But when the man of the house died, we usually bury them. They don't. There's a huge hole, a few 100 meters long, and there are glass caskets on the wall. And they dressed him nicely and put him in one of the caskets. And when they wanted to see him, they pressed a button and he came out. That is the type of family she was staying with. They were very wealthy, wanted to adopt her, but money doesn't come into it. That's the type of Jews they were.
That was Ruth. What about the rest of them?
Raphael, the oldest sister, came, as I told you before, with my mother a week before the war broke out, end of August. Raphael was already in England in 1938. Eric unfortunately got shot by the Nazis. Ruth is I told you the story, to America, to France and America. And Arthur, he was with me in Switzerland.
And your father, Jonas?
My father was in England. He came in May 1939 to England.
Thank you very much. You have told me already a little bit about Eric, but can you tell me what you know about how he was killed?
I tell you something. In the center of Frankfurt is an old burial cemetery. Now, about 20 years ago, 18 years ago, I was invited with my wife to come to Frankfurt from the Frankfurt community, non-Jewish community. We went there for a week, for 2 weeks, but anyway. So every day was an outing to a different part of Germany near Frankfurt. So one day we passed by the cemetery, the oldest Jewish cemetery in Frankfurt. And Frankfurt is a very, very old Jewish community. And the town of Frankfurt built a wall around the whole cemetery. And on the wall there are 11,000 plaques, about 3 inches by 1.5 inch. Of the 11,000 Jews who were deported from Frankfurt, with a name, birth date, when they were deported, and where to. And I saw my brother's name there as well. And from there, then I found out there's a Jewish museum in Frankfurt, and they have got all the details from everybody who got deported. The Nazis kept itemized how should I put it? A register from everybody who got deported, where to and when they were killed. And I found out from somebody told me it's a Jewish museum, and I wrote to them, and they gave me an exact, detailed report about him.
What did it say?
When he was deported, the date, where to, and when he was shot, when he was killed.
How old was he when he was killed?
20. Yeah,
That must have been a very difficult discovery.
it was. I mean, I knew he wasn't alive anymore, but at least I can keep the day of his memory of days of his death and so on.
What impact do you think that had on your whole family?
It was a very, very bad. Very bad to find out that we knew that one of the family was killed, wasn't alive anymore.
The stress was very difficult for your parents as well, wasn't it? Especially your father.
No. My father, he died unfortunately 3 weeks after the war broke out. He couldn't survive. He got a heart attack. He couldn't survive. That war broke out, and one of his children are still in Germany.
So you think the stress of knowing that Eric was in Germany, the rest of you were outside, just was too much for him?
Had a heart attack.
Yes, the consequences were horrendous, weren't they?
Just a mission for a father, for the child.
So, going back to your story, you were in Switzerland from the age of 14 when you said goodbye to your mother, until you were 22 when you saw her again, is that right?
What is it, 23, 22, 23.
And a lot of that time you were in the labour camp. It was obviously hard. You've said in the past that living in Switzerland was not like honey.
It wasn't honey, I think.
Tell me that.
I was in the labour camp for a year and a half, and then came a law out in order that the refugees can emigrate so they can learn a trade. I want actually in Switzerland, obviously, I wanted to learn watchmaker, to make watches, repair watches and so on. But in order to learn it, you have got to pay for it, not that you get paid. One has got to pay for it. And I didn't have the money. So I learned something else. So I learned farrier. And before I learned it, before I decided, let's say, I had a good friend, a doctor, my friend's father actually, and I asked him, is it healthy? With all the hairs in the air, because when you cut furs, automatically that hairs are coming out, and you breathe them in. Is it healthy? So he said, what do you think of peasant? A peasant. When he works in the field and there's coming a thunderstorm, and he gets drenched wet and gets home, it's healthy. Do you think a doctor is healthy, going to all the people with illnesses but not to work is worse. It's okay. Go ahead. So I went ahead, and I learned it for 4 years, got the diploma and everything. And I got paid next to nothing. And in order to survive, in Switzerland was a law. If somebody dies, he's not allowed to be buried before 72 hours. In Germany it was the same. So there's a Jewish law, you mustn't leave somebody who died alone. So he has got to have be guarded against mice and other insects. And so guard them, get well paid from the community. And I was so always applied for it. If I heard somebody died, I said I'm available, and I got there for a day more than a whole month as working at Furrier.
So how often would you do that then, would you say?
Whenever somebody died.
And did you feel strange about that at all or not?
No, I mean it's in the rooms next to the deceased. But
it was imperative that you earned money, so you had no choice. That was what the work was available, and so you had to do it. It must have been very hard to be away from your family and your siblings.
Very much.
How much contact did you have with them?
With my mother, I always had in England, because I could correspond not only that, till my brother who was still in Germany in 1942, I was the one who crossed the letters between them and my mother and my brother. And my sister, because she was in France, in the occupied France. So I was the only one. And I didn't have any money, but my sister had less still. So I don't know whether you know about it. There used to be coupons, international coupons for a stamp. The reply coupons. So I sent her 1 or 2 coupons which she could exchange for money.
So you were the glue of the family,
yeah, I was
just by virtue of the fact you were in Switzerland and people could send you letters.
Correct.
So were you the one who had to tell your mother what had happened to Eric?
I didn't know.
You didn't know until later?
I didn't know until long after the war.
Okay.
I mean, I think every normal person assumes that if there's a Jew in Germany, what happened to them?
You would have had to have grown up very quickly when you went to Switzerland. Suddenly,
no choice
at all. So explain what it was like then when the war was over. So you'd managed to survive the war. Your family had been kind of separated throughout the whole of Europe. What about when the war ended?
When the war ended, we wanted to come to England. And there came a law through Parliament of reunification of families. Do you know that? And my brother and me were eligible, but as my brother was so much younger than me, he got the permit a year earlier than me.
So let's talk about the moment when you saw your mother and your siblings again.
My mother my auntie actually had a hotel in Turkey. My mother was staying there. And I came, I left Switzerland with my best friend, on the 30th of July. We stayed a week in Paris, and I flew from Paris to London. And on the 7th of February. from the airport I took a bus, I don't remember how, to the train station, and from there I took a train to Turkey. And my brother-in-law and my mother were waiting at the station for me. It was a very emotional meeting. Yeah.
Was she as you remembered her?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I mean, I wasn't a baby when I left her. I was already.
But still, you'd both been through a lot, hadn't you?
Oh yes.
You'd all
Both
been
of
through
us.
a lot, as your whole family had really suffered.
Yes.
But it must have felt very good to be back together.
Correct.
So what did you do when you first came to the UK?
First of all, I became a manager in a fur shop in Exeter. And I traveled every day by train from Torquay to Exeter. And in the evening I was a manager there till that was from February, March. I arrived on 7th of February, so it must be end of February, till September, when I decided to move to Manchester, where I had a brother there with family, and started first myself. Eventually I found somebody, a partner, and we were rather successful. But, there's a big but. As a furrier, one has got to have money, because he's only busy from August till December. If he has got money, he makes stock. And if he hasn't got money, he eats up what he's made. So, after a couple of years, also I was rather busy. Sometimes I made 20 fur coats a week. Yeah. New fur coats, from skins to finished fur coats. I had about 10 or 12 employees. So I looked for a trade which is more or less steady, at least 11 months, not 12 months. And I went into handbags. And with his partner, and we increased our thing. We were dealing with the biggest firms in England, the biggest firm. Some don't exist anymore, but you heard of it, British Shoe Corporation. That, and Stetton Simpson, quite a few big ones. And some firms were even set up in handbags. I don't know, do you know a direct raincoat? I set them up in handbags. That raincoats, I brought them. And so I was successful.
Yes, very successful indeed. And at some point you found yourself on holiday skiing in 1952 and you needed some salt.
That was an expensive holiday.
Yeah, well, you obviously were doing quite well, so...
You know, it cost me a few £1 million.
A few million? Well, yes, of course, because you met your wife.
Yeah. Don't you think, since I was gambling there in St. Moritz, but the gamble paid off, but I'm still paying for it.
So tell me about the story, because you were having breakfast and you needed some salt.
I needed some salt, and I asked him for salt, and I took it from the table next to me, and she told me, in German, of course, "You're cheeky like a louse." Okay, that was the first word she spoke to me. But we began to know each other till I asked her whether she's prepared to share her life with me. She wasn't. She was flabbergasted. She asked her mother and the thing, and eventually you can see what happened.
Well, eventually you ended up having a beautiful family.
Yeah.
Children,
Thank God.
grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and you're still very well and healthily together.
Yeah.
How many years have you been married now?
63
Amazing.
in next month.
Congratulations. You've had a lot of things to share in your life as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
Aside from all the happiness that you've created, you've been able to, I guess, share the experiences of what you both went through in different ways.
We went to many times to cousins to America, to Canada for all their weddings and bar mitzvahs and so on. We could afford to go in summer and winter holidays. Thank God. Through hard work and everything, we were happy and still are happy together.
How much of your experiences, although you had very different experiences during the war, how much do you think that brought you together, the fact that you both had a lot of trauma?
The experience, I wouldn't say that it brought us together. As you say in English, love on first sight. And it's still going on.
That's lovely. So we go back to the beginning of the interview now, and how you feel about that period of history. You witnessed a lot of things firsthand. You had a lot of pain. And with all the time that you've had to reflect, do you feel that we've learnt many lessons about that period of history?
I would say so, yes. It taught us not to take everything for granted. You have got to work and to live, to achieve something, what you want, and show it to children, grandchildren, not to take everything for granted.
And what about tolerance and prejudice? Do you feel that as a society we've moved on?
Unfortunately, I think in the last few years, especially through the Muslims, the anti-Semitism is growing here in England.
Is that something you experience again now, or not? You just feel that you...
I personally don't, but through the television, newspapers and so on, I being informed about it.
And what are your views about the current refugee crisis and the people who are fleeing Syria and places like that?
It's a pity. The only thing is, what I always said, when the Jews in Germany were in the same situation, nobody bothered them. Nobody would take them in. And that's the result, how many got killed. Today with the refugees, everybody is helping. I couldn't come to England without a visa. How many are coming here to England or France or Germany, or wherever, without a visa? How is they being helped by the government? Here the government not only wouldn't help them, they wouldn't let them in.
So do you think that's a good thing that we've changed our policies now?
I think so, yeah.
Why do you feel it's important to record your story?
that future generations shouldn't take everything for granted. What I went through, thousands went through the same way, or a different way, but thousands went through. And unfortunately, hundreds of thousands got killed through that.
How do you feel towards the Nazis?
No, I'm surprised because actually the Germans were an educated country, but overnight through Hitler, and I think Hitler only kept his strength through the anti-Semitism, and that united them and brought them together. I mean, Germany was an educated country.
Speaking to your wife earlier on, and I know you were listening, that she was saying that she finds going to Germany and being with Germans still quite difficult. Is that something that you share?
Yes, definitely.
Why?
Because it's the first time I went to Germany after the war, and on business I had to go quite a few times, because exhibitions of the handbags was in Germany, in Offenbach, which is a center of, that is outside Frankfurt. We didn't know. I mean, in Germany, we didn't know anything about it. Do you believe them? I don't. Yeah. So, okay.
Is there something else you wanted to say about that?
No.
No? Okay.
Better not.
In general, is there anything that you feel that you would like to say, any stories that you may have wanted to tell that I haven't asked you about? Because we've come to the end of my questions.
Yeah. No, thank God, God helped me. I was able to build up a successful business here in England. At times I had 60 employees, which doesn't mean anything, because I was always out for mechanization. Because I just give you a small example. I had 12 machinists making only handles for the handbags. One night it occurred to me, how come in America, where the wages are double than in England, they're selling the article at the same price or cheaper? How come? Through a friend I got entrance to the handbag factory. I went on the plane, went to them, went in this factory, and I couldn't close my mouth. One girl was operating 3 sewing machines. Everything automatic. The cotton breaks, the machine stops. End of the material, the machine stops. Everything fully automatic. Not only that goes on roll, the plastic is on rolls usually, slit to size whatever handles one wants to make, and sews it automatically afterwards. Joining this machine is another machine which cuts the handles to size. The handle is coming like a sausage or one thing. The machine cuts it to size. Obviously I bought it immediately. Now there's a question how to send it, by air or by boat. And I worked it out that I earn money